Sunday, I was looking all around for my notes, and I couldn't find them, and all I had was the fill in the blank book, and so we'll finally get to that tonight. I probably should have just done it Sunday, but I'd like for us to pick up where we left off Sunday. I think that we covered pretty well our parable of the talents. Didn't we do that Sunday? What did we look at Sunday? Remember that? Oh, wrong one. All right, we'll pick up where we left off. We'll pick up where we picked up Sunday. Remember the workers for hire? So there was a landowner who went out to get workers for his field. And we've looked at the ideas of husbandmen already. We've looked at the ideas of a landowner or a lord going away to a far country. We've looked at various aspects of that and seen how on some occasions he was using that to show the acceptance of the Jewish kingdom of the Messiah and their lack of realization that he was going to bring everybody into the kingdom. We have seen him show as a lord the forgiveness of debts. That's one of the first ones that we looked at. And then that servant wasn't forgiving. We looked at a lord who gave talents. We'll look at another one. I think we've already made reference to the pounds. We've looked at a master who just took an account of one of his stewards and to see if he had been worthy or not, because he had been up to no good. So we've seen very different aspects using basically the main theme of a lord, a master, bestowing things upon people or being in charge of work within the kingdom, his kingdom. And so that's what's taking place here, is he has workers for hire. And so when did the workers get hired? Okay, different times of the day. And I think it said the first hour, there was about 12 hours in a day. So if you start at 6 o'clock at sunrise, which most, average days would be if you're going to do a 12-hour day. And there were some other things I wanted to bring up Sunday that I didn't. So remind me later about the different hours. Sometimes you'll see it looks like a contradiction, but there's a difference in the counting of hours between the Jewish calendar and the Roman calendar. And so on this occasion, you've got 12 hours in a day. So the first hour is going to be first hour of daylight, 6 o'clock. And so he goes out and he finds workers that are waiting at this particular place. I think we talked about that pretty good Sunday. And so feel free to chime in on any of these if you have something that you want to add from our class Sunday. And he, on this occasion, made an agreement. So that was part of the Lord's responsibility, or his covenant or commitment to the worker, and the worker to him. And so this started at the beginning of the day, and it's wise. I have found it's wise anytime you're going to do some official work for somebody. If you're going to volunteer your time, hey, you're helping somebody out, hey, whatever. But if you're planning on getting some type of compensation, whether you're the one paying for the work or you're the one doing the work, it's just wise to say, okay, now how much for what? And that way both parties know what is expected and what their part's going to be. And it seems like that's what happens here. And in every occasion when it talks about the Lord, he's always wise. He's always planning ahead. He's going to a far country, so he's bestowing talents upon somebody. He's going to a far country, so he puts people in charge of his land. He's checking on it from a distance. So basically he's shrewd. He's a business owner. And you remember what the one talent man said? I knew you were a hard man. I knew that you really go out there and take care of it. And so you see that in many regards, just the qualities of a lord, a landowner, somebody who's in charge, owns it. And so he made agreement to give each worker how much? A penny. And so, I used to try to keep up with how much things are, but with the prices changing so much, I mean, just in the last, few months, price of eggs, went up, and so you see gas and different things vary. And I think I've seen something that was like 12 cents, this would have been back there. But I'm sure it probably didn't cost, the cost of living wasn't that much. So it seems like they weren't making much, but they were getting a fair wage. And so basically it's not just that it was a penny or the exact amount, it was that they had an agreement for a certain amount, and that's what the payment was. So, what happened after that? What happened after the different hours? Remember that? So he went out at the first hour, and then, okay? So you got like half of the day, you're going out kind of like at noon to check lunchtime. Let's see, we got this much more work to do left in the day, or this much more field to get, or whatever. Let's go see if we can get some more to see if we can get it all done in a day. And I've been a part of that too, of doing that. I think maybe I used one of those examples Sunday. Okay, and then what? What did he tell them? Did he? Okay, remember he said, come on with me and I'll pay you a fair price. In other words, I'm going to take care of you. And I've had people do that too. Say, well, how much, I'm going to take care of you. And, you can tell when somebody really is going to take care of you. Most times they're going to take care of you. Whether it's, pay you a good amount to take care of you, or maybe take you to dinner, or to give you a favor or something, that they're going to do right by you. And so he makes that claim to them, which should show his trustworthiness. Again, there's little aspects that I kind of picked up on of the master that I hadn't really seen. He's got these qualities of being in charge, of being fair, of being consistent all through the day. And so then what happens as the day progresses? He keeps going. So now he's 3/4 of the day's gone. You're getting on into the late afternoon now, and so the peak heat of the day is just about to start waning. That noon to 3 is when that's when they were getting baked. That's when the ones who'd been there since 6, who were waiting before then. They were out there waiting to work before the sun rose. And so then what? Okay, you got to go all the way up to the 11th hour. So here it is. It's quitting time. And we said Sunday, that's, a lot of times about that last hour, especially in a 12-hour day, people start, Matt knows when you got a lot of equipment and stuff, you got to keep up with it and clean up, and, you got to start gathering it up. So they were probably getting the tools. If they're going to sharpen them for the next day or whatever, they were probably getting ready to close shop. And then here he comes in with a crew. And what did he say to them when he found them there at the 11th hour? Well, what he said, why are you standing here idle all day long? And what did they say? Nobody hired us. Like, we weren't just standing idle. We didn't have an opportunity to work. And when he said, okay, well, come work for me, what did they do? Okay, I'm using that to make a point that I didn't get to make Sunday, so stick with me. So it was that last hour. He said, okay, come with me, and they did. So basically, no matter the hour or the, I keep thinking I'm doing all the creator of all these sounds here tonight. With each round to the gathering place, when he bid them, whoever he was, was there, they went with him. And so, again, they were called, and they heeded the call. And he told them all, I'm going to take care of you. This is how much I'll agree to pay you for working for the day, and I'll take care of you. And he did that with all of them. And if he was a good person, and he was a shrewd business owner, and he worked with people, because typically people that have businesses or do well, they have some qualities about themselves. They're either a good communicator, or they know how to, kind of finagle things, or they have a good way of bringing people together. But whatever, he's bringing these people, and he probably could see their situations. The ones that were there at the end of the day, do you think that they probably still had families they had to take care of? Do you think that they still had bills? Maybe late notices, and somebody breathing down their neck, and they really need it. He was going to know that. I mean, he's going to kind of see where these people are. So he's going to be compassionate in the sense to say, hey, look, when they had the opportunity to go to work, they did go to work. And it doesn't say exactly how hard they worked that last hour, but then they get in line. And he pays them kind of in reverse. It's kind of like when you get hired on, I was usually the last one to get hired on, so the first one to get laid off. It's kind of one of those sometimes. But they were the last ones there, and they're the first ones to get paid. So as they're getting paid, what are the ones that he picked up at the first hour doing? How much did he? Did he just give them a penny? They only been here an hour. They only been here 2. They only been here 3. Man, we worked all day long. And I can see him getting more and more angry, because we get a little thought in our head sometimes, and then we'll ruminate over it. And then we'll tell somebody about it. Then that just makes it grow, You know what burns me up, Billy Wayne? Let me tell you. Well, then by the time I tell him about it, well, then I'm really burned up. And Billy Wayne finds out about it, well, then he starts getting red about it. And so you got murmuring going on. You get discord. And I do think that we pointed out maybe a bit, if not this past Sunday, a few weeks ago, about murmuring and complaining. That's one of the I think the things that we overlook that's going to keep a good bit of people out of grace with the Lord. And that was really the whole reason that people had to wander in the wilderness. And their forefathers, they weren't happy. They were in slavery, and then they got let out, and they were, I don't know, is God going to save us? Did he leave us? Did Moses die up there? Man, I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. We got to eat this every day. It's just, they just were never satisfied. Oh, Aaron's going to lead us? Well, who does Aaron think he is? So no matter what God presented, or no matter what the occasion, we can't do it. The giants are too big. Where is God? What's he going to do for us? And so God uses them as an example on many occasions, and he tells us that murmuring, complaining is right there with those things that will, we don't often think of murmuring, complaining being in there with being a whoremonger, or an adulterer, or a murderer. But it is one of those categories that'll keep us out of the promised land. It kept that whole generation out. So I did want to make that point too, that it was part of that murmuring, complaining that showed their spirit. And any time, and we have made this point, and I'll make it again, because we're going to see it again. Anytime we get out of ourselves, now we're supposed to deny ourselves and esteem others more highly than ourselves, and it's all about God. But we are still, individuals. And anytime we get out of ourselves and looking into somebody else, judging them. What do they got? What's their relationship like? Comparing, lifting up. ourselves in judgment. Any of those occasions, like we said, when Jesus was at the house of Simon, and the woman was washing his feet, and the attitude towards them, their attitude toward Jesus hanging out with the publicans and the sinners. Anytime you see those occasions where Jesus is calling them out, it's about them putting themselves in a place of judgment, in a higher seat, in some type of position that's going to lift them up. I'm so thankful I'm not like them. And so if you find yourself, sometimes we say, on the day of judgment, there might be a lot of, well, how are they going to make it? You're only going to be worried about you. And so that's what we need to be mindful of. Now, do we need to be concerned for each other? Aren't we our brothers and sisters' keeper? Yes. We should, care for each other and love each other, but we should not try to, if you're always going around and trying to save somebody and make suggestions about what they need to do, but you're not really, are you doing those same things? Are you looking in your own life, seeing those things that could be adjusted or be improved or be strengthened? Because I think all of us can see in other people areas that, it's easy to kind of notice other people's stuff. My experience is if I don't really like something, or I'm kind of maybe find myself being a little judgmental towards somebody else, typically I got the same thing. Maybe I'm not seeing it. There's some type of hypocrisy there. And again, that's what you have too. That's what you see over and over again, is anytime you look at the Pharisees, they start looking at the other people, and then they're not looking at themselves. And they start lifting up their own laws and their own traditions. And you see that over and over again, is this idea of stepping outside of self, becoming unthankful, and not just unthankful, but upset, angry. Instead of realizing you had this blessing and you need to keep this agreement, now all of a sudden you've skewed it. You've taken, by examining what somebody else got that you don't think is fair now, that if you'd never seen that, it would have been completely fair, because that's what you agreed to. But now all of a sudden, that causes you to start shifting things, skewing things. And it starts giving you a false sense of reality of what you really agreed to in the first place, what your relationship is with that. So there's no reason why we wouldn't suspect the Lord to do exactly what he did do. So what happened when they complained to him and said that about them getting more for just working, getting the same amount for just working 1 hour of the day? What did he say? Okay, I heard you. Somebody else said something. He did, and then he said, "So go on, take what you got, and you're good with it." Again, you see the directness of the master. Again, that's another quality. You notice on most every occasion where a Lord is seen in this occasion, aren't they very matter of fact? What do you owe? They forgive. Oh, you didn't forgive? So everything is, the decisions are very direct and well done. Now you'll be a steward over many things. Oh, you did what? You buried it. Well, you could have at least given it to the bank to get interest. Let me take what you got. Give it to him. Cast him into outer darkness. So again, you see a place of leadership, authority, and judgment, and usually it's pretty direct.
Still love the last part of the parable of the prodigal son, when the father is happy that the son has returned.
Yeah.
He
Right.
and being mad at them because they made it to heaven. They lived a faithful life one time that they obeyed the gospel throughout the rest of that life. And God is saying that we're glad that they made it. You know, we're happy that they obeyed it. They wanted to come to heaven. They're gonna receive that. There's no one in heaven, you know, it's talking about they all receive the same reward. I'm not one for degrees of reward or whatever, you know. But I know one thing, God said that if we're in heaven, we won't be unhappy.
Right.
All I got to do is get to heaven, and no matter what I'm at, if I'm the doorkeeper or if I'm
Right.
on the roof of the house, wherever
Yeah.
He wants to put me, I know that I'm gonna be happy there.
Yeah. Yeah, I've said before, I'd be more than happy to sweep the streets of gold. Wouldn't mind that job a bit. And you've got a wonderful point. That's where I was going with that a while ago about the different hours. And when you look at the idea that they were all willing, that's the point I was making with their willingness. Anytime they were called, they responded to that. And evidently, they went and worked. And so it was the masters to deem, you know, who was worthy and who wasn't worthy to receive what. And so he's rewarding them for coming. It was in his hands to do what he could do, and they should have been happy. They should have said, "Oh, you mean you got to come in on the end and he took care of you?" He's like that. Man, he's such a good man. You know, that's the way it should have gone down. They should have uplifted the master for doing that. But he was blessing them for heeding the call. And I think sometimes we look at those at the end as being lazy. And so we don't realize that he was rewarding them for heeding the call. And so anytime in life that somebody repents, and we looked at that Sunday and Sunday night, that was one of the things that stood out to me a little bit more apparent than I had noticed it before with the prodigal son, is the point that Brother DeLuke made about the individual, the importance of the individual, the one sheep, the one of 10, the prodigal son. And there's rejoicing with all of those ones. And if we see it that way, that anytime somebody comes to the gospel, somebody repents or, comes late in life, it doesn't matter what they're able or not able to do at that point. That'll, of course, be between them and God. But if they truly are coming when they have the opportunity, and there's many in this congregation that are like that. So I think that's the main point. They heeded the call when they came, and he's going to reward them equally. Rewards or whatever what do you call that? Degrees. It skipped me there for a minute. Degrees. I don't know that that I want to even venture into that. I do know that it says that the one who knows and doesn't obey is going to get beat with many stripes, and the ones that don't know is going to be beat with few stripes. So sometimes I do wonder about that. But as Oliver and I were studying the last couple of weeks, when we get to heaven, it's not going to matter. The whole purpose of us being there is for the glorification of God, that God created us for his own good pleasure. And so the whole purpose of being in heaven is going to be to give glory to the Father. Revelation begins and ends and reminds throughout that it's God the Father on the throne, where the light and the water and everything springs forth from. The Son is right there lifted up with him because of his role in humanity. And you've got all the angelic beings. You've got the 12 leaders of the patriarchs from the Old Testament. You got the 12 apostles from the New Testament. And you've got all the martyrs. And then you got all the saints. And they're all around the throne. They're all glorifying Father, omnipotent, holy, holy, holy. Hallelujah. And so that idea is repeated over and over and over again. So I think if we look at it that way, instead of not worrying about how big our mansion's going to be, or how big our reward or our crown. We will get a reward. Paul said he did have a crown, waiting for his service. But it's more, to me, it's instead of a crown of honor, because it is honor, but it's relationship. When you see those things within the kingship, that crown passed to the Son, that anointing, the same one you see in Psalm 20, 23rd Psalm. I do believe it's about this relationship that's bestowed upon us in this on these type of occasions. So we could go into probably more on that, but we won't get to the last parable. So any more questions or comments on the idea of the?
The point of this whole parable is brought out even more strikingly in the fact that this isn't the way a man would hire laborers and pay them. The guy that worked all day got his wages, but the guy that worked 2 or 3 hours, he wouldn't have been paid the same as the guy
Right.
that worked all day. So the fact that this man says, it's my money, I can do with it how I want, and I pay everybody the same, is all the more striking an example. If we serve a God that doesn't measure our labor and say, well, you deserve more than this guy. Like Billy Wayne was saying, a man may live pretty much a sinful life, but he's an old man and then obeys the gospel. He's just as much saved and inherits that as the rest of us.
Yeah.
We serve all our life. That's not the way most people hire labor.
Yeah,
They have all the
agreed.
money for different. No, we get paid by the hour, how they did it.
Right.
That's a normal thing. Someone would get a day's pay for working 1 hour.
Yeah, absolutely. He did that for a lot of them, throughout the day. So, wonderful point. And I like how you worded that, because really that is what you have. Is you have it's not about the works that they did. They received the gift because they heeded the call to work, and then they all received that grace and kindness from the master. So a beautiful point. Any other comments? Yeah, definitely make comments like that. All right. So the meaning of the parable of the workers.
Those that serve get the same.
Okay, we'll all get the same reward, which is basically mercy and grace. Ten virgins, Matthew chapter 25. Let's read that. We read the other one Sunday. We didn't get to read this one. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened to 10 virgins. Okay, let me set the stage again. So this is the very end. I mean, Jesus is getting ready to it's the end. And so when you look at chapter 24, you've got him up on the Mount of Olives, and the disciples are there with him privately, and they're trying to understand, because he's been saying different things, going around the temple, telling them about the temple, the stones of the temple are going to be overturned, and the temple's going to be destroyed and be restored in 3 days, and they're trying to figure everything out. He's been saying he's going to be betrayed and given up to the Romans and crucified. And so he's telling them it's coming, but they're still kind of confused about it. And we'll stay confused until he ascends to heaven. But they're asking him at the end of verse 3, when are these things going to happen? The signs that you're talking about and the end of the world. So he's talking about two different things. And so, make sure, especially in this context, in these last, little 3 chapters here, especially these 2, that you understand that they're asking him about the things he's been talking about that's going to come soon, the destruction of Jerusalem. When they see the signs, they need to just run for the hills, pray that they're not pregnant, pray that they're not with a small child, pray they're not nursing, that one will be saved, two will be in the field, one will be saved, and one won't be. Two will be grinding, and one will be saved, one won't. Two will be on a rooftop, one will be saved, one won't. Because some will see the signs, and Christ was warning them about some of those things. But then there was a separate question about the end of the world. You know, is the final coming. So know that those two questions, those two conversations are taking place. They're trying to understand about what's going to happen with him, some of these other things that are supposed to happen in their generation, and then the second coming. And so he goes back and forth between those things. And if you know that, it begins to stand out a little bit more to you. But notice that one of the things he's really been trying to emphasize is you don't really know. You think you know. Look at verse 33, around 32. You know, even before that, he's talking about the Son of Man from heaven, you know, coming in the clouds with power and glory, the four winds, and they think they can tell the weather, verse 32, but they really don't. They can't see it. And that this generation is always looking for a sign. He'd already rebuked them about that. They had already been asking for a sign, and he said, you know, that's all you want to see. And many of them saw the signs, and they still didn't believe. That was the blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. And so he said, you're looking for the wrong things. He said, basically, you're not going to know when it's going to happen. It's going to be like the days of Noah. People are going to be going about their lives, eating, drinking, giving in marriage. And then he makes those comparisons that some's going to be saved, some won't. And so he's been talking about this. And in verse 46, he said, blessed is that servant whom the Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. That's what I want to emphasize. That's really the main point of this parable that's coming, and really the next two parables and the third teaching, is that he's saying, stay ready always for all these occasions. And if we do stay ready, then, you know, we won't be caught, sleeping. And that we'll get to that point too. So before I get too sidetracked, let's read. But so when he says then, so he's talking about then. When this happens, when the end comes, then it's going to be like. Because he's been saying the kingdom of heaven is likened to the leaven, the mustard seed, the treasure. He's been giving us pictures of what it looks like. But now he's talking about in the end. Then this is what the kingdom of heaven is going to look like. So there's a process of the kingdom of heaven being fully revealed. So we said that the things that Moses got on the mount was a picture of heavenly things. We have that in the church. And it's going to be even more fulfilled and beautified at the wedding feast of the bridegroom on that final day. So that's what he's talking about. The kingdom of heaven then will be likened to 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom, and 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. They that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them, but the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept, and at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps, and the foolish said unto the wise, Give us of your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be not enough for us and you, but go ye rather to them that sell, and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, Verily I say unto you, I know you not. Watch therefore, for ye know neither the day nor the hour when the Son of Man cometh. Okay, so we've got the story, and we're all familiar with this, and we probably could tell most of the details. but you've got these 10 virgins, and I read a couple of different things that I guess it was common for them to go in groups of 10. That was a kind of a common thing, I guess. They would go in groups, and so it would be kind of like, it was a wedding procession. So what they would do in the Orient is they would begin the wedding occasions with a meal at the bride's dad's house. So the father of the bride would have the first meal, and they would have the little select group, the main people, and then it would get bigger as it went along. So when they left the bride's father's house, they would go through town and they would make a little trek. They would have their maps lined out so they would know where it was going to be. It was going to be a big deal, and they usually did it at night, and so it was kind of a big thing. Imagine that. Everybody's anticipating it. And isn't our biggest meals and a lot of our grandest occasions, we have them like, in the evening or at night. So you have this occasion and they're all together and they're getting ready to go, but everybody's not invited to the rehearsal dinner. You got little small groups. It depends on kind of who's the best man, and they've got little groups. Well, I've got 3 men, and so you got 3 women on your side, and so you had little groups like that too. In the main group, wedding group, but then you had, if they worked in the household, if they were acquaintances or maybe cousins or second cousins or first cousins once removed, then you would have different locations or different places that you could basically be a part of the procession. And so what was common is they were a part of the groom's company. So they were waiting for the groom, and then they were going to join it. And so as it goes through town, this group is coming in with their lights, the main group, and then they get in and join. And so if they had matching numbers and matching lights, you can imagine how beautiful that could be. And as the procession would grow until they eventually would get to the groom's house and then have the wedding and then the big, huge wedding feast. And so that's what they're waiting for, is that they're anticipating being able to join or be added to this procession of the bridegroom. And they're all pure. Notice that. Again, I think that you have not just readiness, but you're going to have like consistent readiness seen in this. That's why Jesus is saying, you're not going to know. It's going to be a thief in the night. And we had already looked at probably 4 weeks ago, you remember, when we were talking about, especially when Jesus was talking about being the door and, their place. He said, be ready, because you want to be that servant who, when the Lord comes back late at night from the wedding, that you're not sleeping and let him come into the house all by himself, and bring his bags in and from his travel and, try to settle in. You're there waiting like my aunts do when I used to come rolling into town. It didn't matter what time I got to town. They'd probably be sitting up and have a little light on, and then, you want anything to eat, get you something to drink, and, settle in. Oh, how was your trip? Next thing you know, you're sitting up till 2 o'clock in the morning kind of visiting. That's relationship. That's what God wants us to have, is this relationship as a servant. We're not just a worker. We're like the prodigal son who says, hey, man, it'd be a great thing to go back and be a servant in my father's house. My father's the kind of guy that somebody can be sitting there at the end of the day, he'll take him in and pay him a full day's wage. That's my dad. There's bread enough to spare. If you're a servant, you're going to want to stay up and develop that relationship. And so don't forget that Christ has already shown them those kind of qualities that we're supposed to have in our anticipation. There shouldn't be a fear or a dread of the master's return. We should be anxiously anticipating his return, just like the 5 wise virgins, because they had oil not just to last until midnight. They had enough to last all the way to the next sunrise, because it could be an occasion that went so far. I only got a couple more minutes, so I don't think we'll get through our little fill in the blanks. I got those answers though. You want to know them? Let me know, and I'll give them to you. What separated really the virgins? I mean, imagine that. You know, you have the opposite of what you have when you have the last people hired at the last hour. They had the opportunity and they seized it. It seems like these, boy, they had it all the way up until the end. And it's a sad commentary. One of the things that I noticed, or I'd say I noticed that I've read, that I discovered, or read in one of the commentaries that I was looking at, is when the Lord comes through. So they wait, and then they don't have enough at the end, so they have to scramble. And sometimes it's okay not to share. And sometimes there's things we just can't share with other people. We have to sustain ourselves, and that's what the 5 wise virgins did. But when they went and were getting the oil too late, and the bridegroom comes, and now they're already into the wedding feast, what do? And what does he say? Do you? This was an interesting aspect. Do you think he really didn't know them? If they worked in his household and they were going to be a part of the wedding procession, do you think that he didn't even know them at all? I mean, could have been the case. But there's also the indication that he basically says, almost like, man, I don't know you. Like, you're going to come late to my wedding? Like, you're going to show up now? Like, It was him saying, you don't really know who I am. And almost like a reference when Christ said that the sheep recognize his voice. So he knows who's his and they know who's his. And so he said, you're not with me. If you're not with me, basically you're against me. And so they made it that far. And that'd be a sad reckoning to get to the very end, to have stayed pure, sacrificed, to have everything you need. And that's where Revelation, chapter 2 and chapter 3, dealing with the 7 churches of Asia, he's really emphasizing those points. Be faithful unto death. Be ready. You don't know when that hour is going to come. And be someone whom the Lord finds watching. And then he goes on to continue that in the next 2 things. He does a parable with the talents, and then he does the sheep and the goat. And all those are being prepared and being judged by what we did. Questions or comments? When did the bridegroom come? Midnight. Okay, unexpected. What's the difference in the wise and foolish? Okay, they have plenty of oil. And I guess we don't have any kids, huh? Nobody else is coming in here? I kept waiting for somebody else to come. I think this is everybody. What did the foolish ask the wise? Share the oil. When the bridegroom came, the door was shut. And that was interesting too, because Jesus had said earlier, as in the days of Noah. And when God shut the door, then there was no entrance either. All right. Meaning of the parable of the 10 virgins. Always be prepared.